everybody. Welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This is session number 351. And tonight we come to a passage I've been anticipating for a long time. That is Gandalf's account of his first encounter with, presumably, the Balrog. Though, of course, the text is relatively shy about this. But we will go over Gandalf's account. We're not quite up to the Balrog Wings passage yet, but we're closing in on it. In any case, before we get going, just a couple things to let you know about. First of all, an event that is coming up very soon at Signum. This weekend is New England Moot. On the 18th of November, we are going to be having New England Moot up here near me in Derry, New Hampshire. It's going to be held at Studio Lab in Derry, New Hampshire, which is, of course, the facility where Maggie and I film Rings and Realms. Indeed, we're going to be meeting for the Moot in the very room in which we filmed Rings and Realms. So it's going to be... It's going to be cool. Well, are the trees going to be at peak color? It's going to be pretty close. It depends on where you go. You know, if you go further north in the state, like way up in the White Mountains, it might be a little past peak by now. But down here, it's getting pretty close to peak. Though I will admit, this is not the greatest foliage year ever because we've had a horrible drought for the last couple months. So the fall colors are still lovely, but they're not quite as glorious as they usually are because of the drought. But it is still, nevertheless, worth seeing. My backyard is always this gorgeous gold. It reminds me of Lothlorien every year. Golden is the roof and golden the floor, and it's all fun and games till I have to rake the yard. But anyway, but yes, that is going to be happening. So on the 18th, this Saturday, and you are welcome to join us. Even if you can't make it here and see our lovely foliage, you can nevertheless attend, because of course all of our events are hybrid events, and so you can tune in and join us remotely throughout the day on Saturday. And of course, if you do sign up to attend remotely, then you also get access to all the recordings from the day, so that you can even watch asynchronously should your time zones not match up perfectly with ours here on the East Coast. But in any case, I certainly encourage you to join us for that. The next moot after that is going to be Ranger Moot in November. So this is the middle of November. What is it, the 16th? I think it's the weekend of the 16th. Well, here, I can check right now because you find these things on BlackBerry. blackberry.signumuniversity.org. Here in our events section, you see, here's New England Moot, October 18th, and Ranger Moot, the 14th through the 16th. So I had one of the numbers right. The 14th through the 16th. It's a 3-day moot in Loveland, Ohio, right near Cincinnati. And this is being held. This is Ranger Moot is our outdoor moot that is held. It's a camping moot at a scout camp, Boy Scout camp, and so you can come. You can get a cabin. You can do tent camping. You can even stay at a hotel not too far away and drive in if you truly rather. And Nerda Sapiens, I'm kind of hoping it's cold, frankly, because last year when we did Ranger Moot, it was like 98 degrees. It was so hot that we could barely stand outside. I'm quite looking forward to shivering this year after our blazing experience of last year. But anyway, so those are our final two fall moots in our moot season this year. And then we're looking forward to the beginning of the spring moot season with, of course, in January 24th through 26th, which is the beginning of the spring moot season, aka the high summer moot season. In Australia, we have Osmoot down in Canberra, which is going to be great fun. So really looking forward to Osmoot this year, and I hope to be soon having for y'all some information about Kiwimoot, which is planned for 2027. Again, end of January, beginning of February. We're finalizing dates. And we're also going to have some other options to be putting before people to get some. We're going to be in Wellington, and we're going to do bunches of stuff. We're going to do touring. I've never been before, so you can come and join me on my first tour. Perhaps it will be your first tour as well, of the really fun Lord of the Rings associated sites in New Zealand. We'll have readings and discussions and all kinds of fun things. We'll be having our regular moot in the middle of it, and then we'll be having tour events and things on either side. So strongly encourage folks to plan for that. That's just over a year from now, about 16 months from now, in end of January, early February of 2027. So as I said, I should have some stuff to share with you guys before too long about that. Yeah, there we go. All right. The last thing I wanted to announce just briefly is just to let you guys know that we are coming up on the Signum University's fall fundraising campaign that we do every year. That's going to be beginning in a couple weeks. I'm going to be holding a launch event for that on Thursday evening, October 30th. So you can join me there to learn more about that. And I'll be certainly sharing some things with you as we go along and exploring the Lord of the Rings as well. So that is coming up very soon. All right. Let us jump into the text here. Big passage. As I say, I am really excited for this passage. I've been waiting for this one. And let me explain why. One of the most interesting things about this is one of the passages. This is one of my top 5 passages in all of the Lord of the Rings. To think about how magic works. It's a conversation we've had before. And I've been saying, let's wait till well, here's one of the passages I wanted to wait to get to. Let's see what Gandalf has to tell us. "It's getting hot," he gasped. "We ought to be down at least to the level of the gates now. Soon I think we should look for a left-hand turn to take us east. I hope it is not far. I am very weary. I must rest here a moment, even if all the orcs ever spawned are after us." Gimli took his arm and helped him down to a seat on the step. "What happened up away at the door?" he said. "Did you meet the beater of the drums?" "I do not know," answered Gandalf, "but I found myself suddenly faced by something I have not met before. I could think of nothing to do but to try and put a shutting spell on the door. I know many, but to do things of that kind rightly requires time. And even then the door can be broken by strength. As I stood there, I could hear orc voices on the other side. At any moment I thought they would burst it open. I could not hear what was said. They seemed to be talking in their own hideous language. All I caught was rash, fire, that is, fire. Then something came into the chamber. I felt it through the door, and the orcs themselves were afraid and fell silent. It laid hold of the iron ring, and then it perceived me and my spell. What it was I cannot guess, but I have never felt such a challenge. The counterspell was terrible. It nearly broke me. For an instant the door left my control and began to open. I had to speak a word of command. That proved too great a strain. The door burst in pieces. Something dark as a cloud was blocking out all the light inside, and I was thrown backwards down the stairs. All the wall gave way, and the roof of the chamber as well, I think." Okay, there's a lot here. As I recall, we actually peeked ahead at this passage last time. We talked about Gandalf's first paragraph a little bit and his remarkable sense of direction, saying they need to look for a left-hand turn. Remember, they've been walking in the dark for like an hour. He's saying that he must rest, even if all the orcs ever spawned are after us. Now, first, I love Gimli's question. Did you meet the beater of the drums? Yeah, Okay, you're right, Jackie. Spawned is interesting if we want to talk orcs. Um, Certainly, this Gandalf might have said every spork, that's a different thing. Every orc ever made is after us, right? But his use of the word spawned surely shows that Gandalf, even at this point in Tolkien's imagination and understanding of the nature of orcs, believed that orcs were that they reproduced sexually. Um, but anyway, okay. Did you meet the beater of the drums? On the one hand, Gimli, what does this tell us? This question, did you meet the beater of the drums? It tells us how Gimli is interpreting the drum beats that they've been hearing. Doom, boom, doom. Gimli is plainly... Okay. He is... Okay, let me say one thing first. I don't think that Gimli is correct in what he is saying here. If Gimli is implying that the leader of the opposition is that, like, whatever enormous magical monster as yet unidentified is behind, is the mover of the things that have been happening, he's associating that with the beating of the drums. And I think it's not true. I think it's clearly not true. I think we will, by the end of the chapter, by the very end of the chapter especially, we will acquire a good deal of information, I believe, that will demonstrate that the Balrog himself is not beating the drums, nor is the drum beating effect a direct manifestation of the power of the Balrog. However, the fact that Gimli, the question, did you meet the beater of the drums, clearly means, I think in context, if we had to paraphrase that, forgetting the drums themselves for a second, if we had to paraphrase that, what Gimli is asking is, did you meet the boss? Right? Like, did the big boss come out? Is the big bad who is behind all of this, did you meet that person? I think that's clearly what Gimli is asking when he says, did you meet the beater of the drums? And so this shows that at the very least, Gimli is associating the drums with that kind of power, with that kind of authority. We can see this in some way has seemed kind of intuitive. That is certainly in the sense that the drums started it, right? The drums seemed to signal the command. So associating authority with the drums is logical based on how they began and what we saw, right? I think that seems to make a bunch of sense. However, I don't think... Notice, by the way, Gimli's using drums in the plural. The beater of the drums. The narrator, when characterizing it, remember saying as if all of the caverns of Moria had been turned into a vast drum, singular, right? Gimli uses the plural, drums. But, Jackie, I think that is exactly why he does that. When he says the beater of the drums, it's a literary reference, right? He is remembering Drums in the Deep. That was written in the Book of Mazarbul, which is even now in his own backpack, right? I yeah, yeah. So I think that he is thinking of that quotation. So when he says, "Did you meet the beater of the drums?" Again, what he is asking, another way to paraphrase what he's asking is, "Did you meet the one who is responsible for the death of my kin?" Would be, I think, potentially another way to kind of paraphrase what he's saying there. He seems to be associating the drums with, in some sense, the cause of the orc attacks. Yeah, Adam, it's a very good question. Did you get vengeance even? Right? Like, did you take out the beater of the drums? Like, something happened up there, right? Did you take him out? Is Balin avenged? Or even if not Balin, like all the rest of them, right? I mean, Balin was avenged immediately, right? But yeah. So yes, those things all seem to be kind of associated with, like involved, I guess I should say, in Gimli's question here. As far as what I'm not convinced that this is I'm not convinced that Gimli is genuinely attempting again to do like a sober analysis of the situation. Like, I've been thinking about the resonant patterns of those drums, that drum. I think it's multiple drums. And I think that, somebody notice how there's a singular beater, but multiple drums, right? So again, I don't think he's thinking practically. I don't think that we are to take this as some kind of authoritative statement about, that the Balrog was beating on the drums. Right. So yeah, I certainly don't believe that would be the right way to take it. Balin, exactly. He just wants to know what happened. Exactly. I think what is most clear is that he has a sense. Before Gandalf explains anything, Gimli is the one who articulates the only theory about what happened up there, right? The one kind of like interpretive hint that we're given before Gandalf begins his account. And that is that there was some kind of boss confrontation up there. That Gandalf probably encountered, not just like, why did Gandalf come tumbling down the stairs? Was it because he was overwhelmed by orcs? That didn't seem to fit, right? Exactly, Maureen. He faced an enemy. And yeah, Tony, that's a really good point. Tony says if he were thinking practically, the drum beater would just be some guy. You don't have your leader actually beating the drum. Right. Yeah, exactly. No, it's to him, the beater of the drums, I think it has a metaphorical weight, right? Especially focused on and filtered through the wording of the book to which it's alluding, right? Which it's almost quoting. Yeah. Yeah, King's Foil, I think that's a fair way of thinking of it too. The tense and voice emphasize the beater of the drums. The tense and voice emphasize that he's most interested in the entity producing such a scary sound rather than the sound itself. Yes, again, I agree. I certainly don't think that Gimli is thinking about the mechanics of drumming at this point, or the construction of the drum or anything like that. He is thinking about. And again, I think even we've been talking the metaphors, the turning the caverns into an enormous drum, right? That initial metaphor has already been prompting us to imagine the drums as something other than just a big, loud, noisy drum. even remember the way that it keeps getting introduced, like with conversational prompts, as if it's talking, as if we're hearing the voice, as if, as we've said before, the entire mountain or the entire cavern is itself a monster, and the drums are its heartbeat, and it is waking up and coming for them, right? That's the kind of horror atmosphere of this whole thing, and it's that kind of atmosphere that Gimli, I think, is invoking when he says, "Did you meet the beater of the drums?" He doesn't know what else to call it. Now, it might puzzle you. Like, some people might think, well, he's heard of Durin's Bane, surely. But he doesn't ask that. He doesn't say, "Did you meet Durin's Bane?" In fact, I'm not even sure that that's really prominent on his radar screen here. We might expect it to be, because, of course, we already know that it kind of almost certainly is Durin's Bane, in fact, that Gandalf just encountered. But we don't see any evidence that even Gimli is thinking in that direction right here. Again, keep in mind, we don't yet know, nobody knows what Durin's Bane was. The actual identity of Durin's Bane is still a mystery, like a worldwide mystery. Nobody knows what Durin's Bane is, right? So it's not even like that would be giving away something or anything like that. Like you know, if Gimli had said, "Did you meet Durin's Bane?" he wouldn't be naming anything. He would just be saying, like, so there was some mysterious, probably hugely powerful creature up there, and we know that Durin and his people were driven out of Moria originally by some very scary, enormous, and unknown creature. You know, could they possibly have been the same thing? Right? I mean, but nobody's talking that way. And I think that's really interesting. Tolkien doesn't tip that card at this point. Even at this point, when Gimli is asking this kind of vague question, "Did you meet the big scary thing?" There's the big scary thing that he's kind of imagining a big scary thing. But it's not even like there's an order of magnitude for the big scary thing to grow, right? And it hasn't yet. And the way that Tolkien stages this, I think, is really important to the effect. "I do not know," answered Gandalf. "But I found myself suddenly faced by something that I have not met before." Now, first of all, notice the voices, notice the verbs. What's going on with something funky happening with the verbs in that sentence. "But I found myself suddenly faced by something I have not met before." The passive voice in the middle there, faced by, right? Faced by something. He could have said, "But I found myself suddenly facing something that I have not met before." Yes, Eric, you're thinking of that last verb. "I have not met before," present perfect. That is a lovely verb tense for that occasion, isn't it? "I have not met before." Well, he can't say that anymore, right? I have not met. So present perfect means an action that is completed in the present moment. It's an action that has currently come to completion, right? So his action of not meeting something like this before is finished. It's finished right now. But yeah, the thing that interests me is the shift to the passive. The simpler way for him to have said that sentence would be, "But I found myself suddenly facing something that I have not met before." The beginning of the sentence is about him. Suddenly I found myself. The end of the sentence is about him that I have not met before. But the middle of the sentence is not about him. The middle of the sentence is suddenly about the other thing. I was faced by something. And I don't know why Gandalf does that. Well, I'm not sure. I'm not even sure of the force of it. What I mean is, if you so think about it this way. What's the difference between saying, I found myself facing something and I found myself faced by something? When you say, I found myself facing something, you are talking about yourself coming into contact with something. Like the other thing is standing still and you come upon it. I think that would mean what would be kind of invoked when you say you are facing. Yeah, Bob, the 3/4, that's exactly the kind of thing that I was thinking. Faced by means the opposite, right? The other thing is facing him. He was the one. So the other one, Bob, as you said, was the other thing is the active one. Yes. Yeah. I think Eric says, I was faced. Oh, hang on. Well, that's interesting. Eric, I was just thinking of the difference between being faced by and facing. But you're right to say I was faced with this thing means that that thing is the thing you have to deal with. I was faced by that means that that thing was facing you. Yeah. It definitely suggests to me I was standing there and all of a sudden this thing turned to face me. The action is being done by the other person. That's why he's speaking in the passive voice. From his position, it's a passive voice statement. I was faced by. The action is being performed by the other. So he shifts into the passive voice in the middle of that sentence in order to emphasize he found himself. It's a thing he had not met before. But again, the center of that sentence is this thing faced me. I was standing there and its regard was turned towards me. Its face turned in my direction. Its attention and will was turned to me. And then Gandalf reacts. I could think of nothing to do but to try and put a shutting spell on the door. Remember we had talked about try and put last time? I was thinking about that several times in the couple of weeks since we had class. I could think of nothing to do but to try and put a shutting spell on the door. Needless to say, every time anyone has said or written try to or try and, it was funny. I saw a social media post that had to try to and to try and in the same sentence. Like they did it the two different ways in the same sentence. But I feel sure that they did that accidentally. That like to them it was synonymous. And I was thinking back to our discussion. I mean that is very common. Like that is how it normally goes. But remember our conclusion that as we were talking about it last week again, was to try to put means to make an attempt to do the second action, in this case, putting. But when you say and, you have made instead a compound word. You are doing two things. You are trying and you are putting. Yeah. I am not saying that the two meanings are vastly different. It's a distinction. But it's all about two compound verbs versus a hierarchy of verbs. To try to put, in this case, would imply that Gandalf was not confident about his ability to put a shutting spell on the door. And I think he's perfectly confident of that. What he's not confident of is whether or not the shutting spell is going to work, right? That's the try part of it. He's going to put a shutting spell on the door. And by doing so, he's going to try and keep the door closed. But anyway, I could think of nothing to do but to try and put a shutting spell on the door. That's so interesting in so many ways. Here's one of the follow-up questions that it makes me want to ask. What was his plan A? He was standing there. He was standing there and he was going to guard the door? So putting a shutting spell on the door was not plan A. That was something he thought of in the moment, he says. And the thing that inspired him to think of that in the moment was being suddenly faced by something he had not met before. So when he found himself faced by something he had not met before, Gandalf spontaneously decides to put a shutting spell on the door. Which suggests that was not plan A. It also suggests the whole something I have not met before thing suggests that he was not expecting that. So when he told them swords are no more use here and that they should go on, he believed, or maybe hoped, I don't know, that what he was going to be encountering was a whole mess of orcs and possibly trolls. Tony and Derbataluk, I kind of agree with you. Like, it seems likely that fire and lightning may have been plan A, potentially. That he was planning to... Now, I am put in mind of a Hobbit parallel. Remember, we're still in the whole segment of Hobbit parallel. Remember all the Hobbit parallels we've been looking at ever since, the wolf attack, if not before. We got the wolf attack. We got a wolf attack and Gandalf setting fire to things and scaring off the wolves. We got a secret door, right, that could only be opened under certain circumstances, right? Immediately right after that, dwarf door that couldn't be seen when shut and all. So a bunch of we've been looking at Hobbit echoes for the last couple chapters of the Lord of the Rings here, right? Remember, what did they do when they were being chased by goblins in the Misty Mountains? How did they make time to escape? They made time to escape. Well, so Gandalf had a blinding flash of light and sparks and things like that, right? But remember when the goblins were chasing them? Like afterwards, they get out and they're running away, but the goblins are catching up with them. And Gandalf and Thorin draw Glamdring and Orcrist, respectively, and stand around a corner so that when the goblins come running around the corner, they confront Glamdring and Orcrist, beat her and bite her, and are A, slain, and B, terrified. And it takes them a long time to get up the courage to go around that corner again. Right? Maybe plan A was something like that. Something in that category. Combined with some lightning, some fire. Like he did. I mean, he did a lot better, you'll recall, than flaming pine cones. Flaming pine cones on the wolf tour just recently, right? Set the whole forest on fire instead of just shooting off burning pine cones. So maybe he's got something else maybe he's got something similar up his sleeve here, right? It would be kind of funny if, like, confronting them with Glamdring were his plan. The reason I think that's going to be that would be funny is that he had just literally said to Aragorn, "Swords are no more use here," and then it would be like, "By which I mean your swords are no more use here. My sword is still use here." Right? That would be a little bit funny. Now Valinor says he could have done that with all the others. Well, no. Again, remember, what did they do? What was the plan? What did the others do while Thorin and Gandalf, the rest of them kept running to keep getting a head start. And then Thorin and Gandalf came afterwards, right? So again, he says, go, and don't wait for me long, which suggests that he believes that he might be there a while. So again, I'm guessing here. I'm guessing because it's easy. We think about what happened and it's easy to imagine that that's what was always going to happen. But Gandalf here clearly implies, I could think of nothing to do but to try and put a shutting spell on the door. He says, as if putting a shutting spell on the door was something that just came to him in that moment. Surely he'd have already put a shutting spell on the door. But he didn't. He hadn't already put a shutting spell on the door. So when he goes up the stairs, he doesn't just put a shutting spell on the door first thing. Which implies to me he expects and even wants it to be opened. And as soon as they open the door, what are they going to get? A face full of Glamdring and, fire and lightning and whatever else. They're going to get a face full of Gandalf, right? Yeah. And remember also, as I was suggesting a few weeks back, there is that in the whole scene. From the moment the drums go off through the moment where Gandalf is saying swords are no more use here, which sounds like Gandalf is prepared to sacrifice himself. Not that that's plan A. Dying isn't necessarily plan A. But that he already feels that might be necessary and would be worth it to let the rest of them escape, to let the ring escape from Moria, from the orcs. So that he was going to fight in some way, right? That as far as I can see, again, if he hadn't already put a shutting spell on the door and only just now decides to do it, he wanted the door open, which means he was going to fight him. I mean, that seems only logical. Yes, and Bjorning, just as you're saying, Gandalf goes on to say, I know many shutting spells. Which, of course, one would expect from someone who already claimed to know 200 opening spells without even having to think about it. Right? So he already knows a ton of opening spells. Shouldn't be any surprise to us that he knows shutting spells also. I know many, but to do things of that kind rightly requires time. And even then the door can be broken by strength. But to do things of that kind rightly requires time. In other words, if that had been plan A, he'd started as soon as he got up there, which he hadn't, right? Yet another one. Maureen, Gandalf obviously could have taught the magic of doors class, right? If there had been like a Hogwarts elective on, door spells, like Gandalf obviously could have been the adjunct professor of that, clearly. He is all over this, apparently. And just keep in mind that these two passages, that one outside the gates when he talks about knowing 200 opening spells, and this one when he talks about knowing many shutting spells. These are some of the only times we're going to get magic talked about this way. Gandalf speaks here. This is the most fantasy RPG friendly way of talking about magic that Tolkien will ever do in The Lord of the Rings, right here. The idea that there is a thing called a shutting spell, and that Gandalf knows a bunch of them. Even with the opening spells, that even seemed a little bit less clear. That is to say, he said, I know many, you could read what he said about opening spells to just be like, like passwords, almost like phrases that have been known to open doors. Things of the open sesame variety, right? But this, a shutting spell, this is really clearly an act of magic, of spoken magic, that performs a particular action. Now, Eric asks the very sensible question: do you think that Gandalf / Tolkien means this word solely in the modern sense of magic incantation, or is there still some bit of the Old English sense of spell, meaning saying? So, of course, Eric, as doubtless you yourself are also thinking, it's never safe to dismiss the Old English meaning of a word that Tolkien uses, right? So yes, the word spell means speech or story or news. It clearly does mean magical incantation. And yes, I was also thinking of that other very famous example Balinor cites of Pippin talking about asking if Saruman can put a spell on them from a distance, right? To which the answer is basically yes, he can, right? But yeah, spell just means something that somebody says. It is, of course, that's where the word gospel comes from. Godspell, good news. Literally, gospel literally means good news in Old English. And remember, there's going to be a joke about that later, right? When Wormtongue is going to name Gandalf Lothspell, which means bad news. It's the opposite of gospel. But anyway, yeah. So yes, it is. No, it is not safe to not think of it in that sense. I think it is also perfectly clear from the usage here, from the usage in front of the gates of, the west gates of Moria, and from Pippin's usage, that the word does seem to mean incantation. Remember when Tolkien used the word incantation in a similar way with the Barrow-wight, right? The Barrow-wight was singing a song that passed into an incantation. And that is, Frodo has this chilling feeling that a spell is being cast, that magic is being done through the words being spoken by the Barrow-wight in that moment. Unfortunately for the Barrow-wight, right, that is then disrupted by someone whose songs are stronger songs immediately afterwards. Yeah, good. Frumius Bujum is remembering the dwarves of yore made mighty spells from the dwarf song in The Hobbit. Yeah. That seems to have to do with magic there as well. I think the one thing, Eric, that I think is perfectly clear is that when anyone in Tolkien uses the word spell in this sense of like to do a magic thing, it's still clearly associated with words, right? Gandalf took that for granted when he talked about opening spells, because of course he immediately said that he knew every spell that had been used for that purpose in every tongue of, men and elves and even orcs, remember? So like if it's in languages, that means it's with words, right? So when he's going to try and put a shutting spell on the door, it's going to be by words. And if you'll remember, we heard that. Right? Let's go back for a second. Swords are no more use here. Frodo thought he could hear the voice of Gandalf above, muttering words that ran down the sloping roof with a sighing echo. The words running down the sloping roof with a sighing echo would appear to be Gandalf's spell. Right? And yes, Madmen22 on YouTube, you are certainly correct. This chapter is said, this is basically the chapter that gave birth to Dungeons and Dragons. Pretty close. Yeah, certainly has a lot to do with it. Yeah. This spell, I think, is still in Dungeons and Dragons in the current editions. Yes, Durbatu Luke is also, of course, remembering that it's in the poem, the song that Faramir and one time Boromir hears. There shall be counsels taken stronger than Morgul spells. Yes. Anyway, Gandalf knows many sayings, many spells, many words of power that have power. That's what magic is the exertion of will or power. He knows many of these things, the effect of which is to hold shut a door. Notice Gandalf is immediately aware, or is immediately telling them about the weakness of this as well. There are two weaknesses. One, he needs more time. The casting time is longer than he's got. So he can't do it rightly. If he had more time, he could have done it better. But even then, the door can be broken by strength. The spell is just keeping the door closed. It's not keeping the door together. If you were to shatter the door into pieces, I don't know, would bits of it still cling to the, to the frame where Gandalf's spell was holding it closed? I don't know, but it wouldn't matter much, right? But he knows that would be possible. By the way, this also suggests to me why he didn't bother with this before. Why the shutting spell wasn't plan A. Because there's a troll in there. He knows they have a troll. Right? I mean, it got hurt in the foot and left again, but remember he said, go now before the troll returns. So if that troll comes back, that troll could pound its way through the door. And yes, it's good. That I don't doubt that troll is, now going to be lasting lame, right? Exactly. Bob was thinking the same thing. The troll's bootless foot is lasting lame. And yet, nevertheless, I bet you it could muster up enough power to break down the door. Strength of that kind is what Gandalf was expecting. Remember, again, he said to them, go before the troll comes. He's expecting the troll to come any minute. So knowing that this shutting spell is of no use against physical strength, it wasn't plan A. So we talked about what plan A might have been, almost must have been under the circumstances. Why does he switch to plan B? And the answer seems to be panic. He does not know what is on the other side of that door. It is something he has not met before. He's standing there. He's ready. Is he going to do a blast of fire? Is he going to do lightning? Is he just going to do a blinding flash? And is he going to, glamdring? We don't know exactly what the plan was, but he was going to do something. And then suddenly he finds himself faced by something he has not met before, and he panics. He's like, well, no, let's stop the door from opening. I don't want this door to open after all. I thought I was ready for the door to open, but now I don't know if I'm ready for the door to open. So he panics and put a sudden half-priced shutting spell on the door, right? He doesn't have time to do it rightly. He does it wrongly instead. Even pointing out, like, he knows this is at best a temporary gesture. At most, it's just going to give him time to think. As I stood there, I could hear orc voices on the other side. At any moment, I thought they would burst it open. So yeah, they're like, okay, they can't open it. So what are they going to do? They're going to break it down. Again, this is why this wasn't plan A, right? He keeps expecting the orcs to pummel through the door. I could not hear what was said. They seemed to be talking in their own hideous language. All I caught was "Hash," fire. Okay, so they're talking, and he hears them saying something about fire. Not real specific, but okay. Then something came into the chamber. Okay, wait. I thought he said he was faced with it. Apparently, he felt himself faced with the thing before it came into the room. You see that? He is faced by something he hasn't met before, panics and puts a shutting spell on the door, and then just hears orcs. And it's sufficiently calm that he is trying to listen in on the orc conversation through the door that he has himself sealed shut. Then something came into the chamber. So, okay. It faced him. And Eric, I think I agree with you that the facing of him seems to have something to do with like turning its will in his direction in some sense. Its will or attention. But it's not aware of him yet. We know that because he's about to say that. Then something came into the chamber. I felt it through the door. Which is presumably a different thing from I found myself suddenly faced by something I have not met before. I felt it through the door, and the orcs themselves were afraid and fell silent. It laid hold of the iron ring, and then it perceived me and my spell. What it was, I cannot guess. But I have never felt such a challenge. The counterspell was terrible. He had said some words. It says some words against it. Now, keep in mind, I think that counterspell is exactly what Gandalf was standing there doing outside the gates of Moria. He was uttering counterspells. He thought there was a shutting spell on the door, and he's like, I know a bunch of opening spells. Like, an opening spell is a counterspell to a shutting spell, obviously. Right? So I think that Gandalf was there trying to count. Gandalf thought this was an arm wrestling competition, right? He thought he had to outmuscle the magic that was holding the gates closed. And that's why he laughs at himself. And he's like, no, I just had to read the invitation. Actually, I feel kind of stupid that I was trying to fight this when this is not a fighting situation, right? But this is a fighting situation. Gandalf has exerted his power, his will, towards holding the door closed. This other thing utters a terrible counterspell that nearly breaks Gandalf. Not Gandalf's spell, but Gandalf. This, by the way, is how the spell here starts to sharply differ from a Dungeons and Dragons spell, right? If your Dungeons and Dragons mage casts a spell on something and that spell is resisted or broken or neutralized, it doesn't hurt the mage when that happens, right? Exactly, Balinor. D&D spells are independent of the caster. Here, Gandalf had put this shutting spell on the door, and he himself is almost broken when a counterspell is voiced against it. For an instant, the door left my control. Pause there for a second. Left my control. That implies that by placing a shutting spell on the door, this means a continuous effort of will on Gandalf's part. The door, he was holding the door within his control. Now again, he can't hold the door together, right? Again, if they break it with strength, he's not exerting his will to keep the door in one piece. He is exerting his will continuously towards the end of holding the door shut. And now, this other thing, the something, he's been called something twice. The something is exerting its will, and that will is very terrible, on opening the door. For an instant, the door left my control and began to open. So something is winning in a direct, straightforward battle of wills with Gandalf. Gandalf's will being exerted to keep the door shut. Something's will being exerted to open the door. The door is opening. I had to speak a word of command. Yeah, by terrible, I assume he means it's terrible. Like, it inspired terror. Right? We use terrible to mean really bad, right? Right, like, if somebody says, like, how was the meatloaf, and you say terrible, you probably don't mean that it, like, inspired terror in the populace, right? You just meant it was extremely bad. As many have said, and of course, Jackie, I'm thinking of C.S. Lewis, talking about how most words seem to eventually drift into vague statements of praise or blame, basically. But yeah, that's what happens when they lose their meaning. But anyway, the original meaning was inspiring terror and fear. The counterspell was terrible. Gandalf is saying, I was terrified. I was experiencing terror when I felt the counterspell. It nearly broke me. Yes, he was afraid for his life. Remember his first comment at the bottom of the stairs. I have met my match and nearly been destroyed. I remember we were talking about that. We're like, whoa, that's a little extra Gandalf, isn't it? Like, you know, I died, or I was slain, or whatever. Green Great Dragon trying to cause trouble by saying he was not feeling terrific, pointing out, of course, the other usage of that word. But anyway, but yes, Gandalf said he almost died, and he's repeating it. It nearly broke me. Again, both of those times, destroyed and broke. Both of those verbs are not just normal death words. He's not just saying like, I was almost stabbed to death, or, like, or something like that. It almost, he's, this is something different. I was overwhelmed and nearly crushed, not physically, metaphysically. I had to speak a word of command, capital C. Do you remember? Some of you have done the Mythgard Academy series on the history of Middle-earth, and will remember from several years ago now our discussions of the history of the Lord of the Rings. You remember when Tolkien wrote this passage, Tolkien himself didn't yet know it was the Balrog? That was fun. Yes, that's right. It's Saruman. It was in the first draft. It was going to be Saruman. Yeah. It's true. It's true. The fact that I really don't suspect that the Peter Jackson team knew that makes that part of the scene even funnier, actually. That part of the movie. But anyway, Gandalf says, I had to speak a word of command. I don't have any idea what that means, really. Bjorning, yeah, he makes it sound like a nuclear option of some kind. These two sentences are very mysterious. I had to speak a word of command. That proved too great a strain. Notice how indeterminate the second sentence is. That proved too great a strain. On what? Gandalf? The door? The mountain? It's not clear. Right? Now, right afterwards, the door burst in pieces. So probably it means it was too great a strain on the door. But I think it was clearly more than just the door. Right? He was thrown backwards. Gandalf was thrown backwards down the stairs. By what? By the eruption in power? Right there? When he speaks the word of command? I don't think it's just like door fragments, hitting him or something. I had to speak a word of command. And yes, C is capitalized. W is not capitalized. A word of command is not a thing. It's just a word, not capitalized. It's just a word. I had to speak a word, but what kind of word? I had to speak a word of command, capital C. Yeah, exactly. Command is the thing that is being deployed or accessed by a word. Eric, I think that's exactly right. Yeah. So if there is a nuclear command, which, and yes, I agree, I forgot who said this, but yes, significantly more powerful than the shutting spell. If Gandalf was panicking before, he's panicking more now. He's panicking because he sensed something that he had never met before and he wasn't sure he was ready to face it. Then the door, his shutting spell starts getting overpowered by a counter opening spell, and now he's really panicking. Now he knows for a fact he doesn't want to meet it face to face, right? So he does a command thing. He issues a command. And it's hard because I want to say something like, what is that? I want to say something like, to exert his will directly. To enforce his will upon the primary world of Arda. But isn't that what all magic is? I mean, isn't that what the shutting spell was also in its way, right? It is more like dominating. Jack, it does seem like it's crossing a line. Almost. Like, why wasn't a word of command plan A? Well, I don't know. Because you're not, I mean, is this a transgression? Is this a confession by Gandalf? I had to speak a word of command. I'm sorry, I did it. I spoke a word of command. I know I'm not supposed to do that. But I didn't see any other choice. It's possible. It doesn't really sound that way to me. I had to speak a word of command that proved too great a strain. It sounds more like he's saying, yeah, that was totally overdoing it. There's literal fallout from his speaking the word of command in that case. Fencing Frog, that's exactly what I'm thinking. It's why I say that proved too great a strain. The fact that we're not told in that sentence what the strain was on seems to me very suggestive. Strain on the door, strain on Gandalf himself, strain on the fabric of Arda. Yeah, not at all clear. For the record, I don't think the Balrog knocks Gandalf down the stairs. Gandalf alludes to it. The door burst in pieces. Something dark as a cloud was blocking out all the light inside, and I was thrown backwards down the stairs. He's telling them what he saw. He only got one glimpse. Remember, he himself doesn't know what it was in that room. He's never met something like that before. So he's trying to tell, remember, this was Gimli's question. Did you meet the beater of the drums? And he says, I don't know. Now let me expand upon that. I don't know. And so he's telling them the only thing that he does know. Something dark as a cloud was blocking out all the light inside. Remember the shaft? Light from the shaft coming down? There's no light in the room now. The light is all blocked. That's what he saw. When the door shatters, when the door bursts into pieces, and there's nothing anymore between him and the something, and he sees the something, all he sees is something dark as a cloud. It's dark in there and it shouldn't be dark. There's light in there, but he doesn't see any light. And he's thrown backwards down the stairs. And nothing in the way he says that, I was thrown backwards down the stairs. He does not seem to me to be attributing his being thrown down the stairs to the thing that was inside. The door burst in pieces and he was thrown backwards down the stairs. Yeah, I think it's the explosion. Nancy, it's interesting. I was thinking of Ungoliant too. That sort of darkness visible, right? Not just a blocking of the light, but an absorption of the light. Yeah. Another question. Do we even know that Gandalf is commanding? Like, what's Gandalf commanding? Is he commanding the door? I don't think we know that. The door left my control and began to open. I had to speak a word of command. I know I always assumed, like in all of my early years, I assumed that he was speaking to the door. Like the magical wrestling match is about the door, keeping the door closed or opening the door, right? But Bjorn, he might have tried to command the Balrog. Well, doesn't know that it's a Balrog yet. Might have tried to command the thing. Yes, he perceives something else and he might have tried to command it. But that's the thing, Dubata Luke. Door is the subject in the sentence before and the second sentence after. Yes, it is. But there aren't any... This isn't a pronoun issue, right? It's not an antecedent question. Like, it's if he had said, I had to speak a word of command to it, or at it, or something, then we would say, well, what is the it? Then we would be doing proximity things. Well, it's probably the door. That's what he was just talking about. But he doesn't say that. He just says flat out, I had to speak a word of command. Full stop. Commanding what? And to do what? Well, so, Marine, they're battling over control of the door. Yeah, but remember, Gandalf himself, there's no point to it. The door can be broken, and it's about to be broken. The door is incidental. What he's trying to do... So, if I had to guess, the word of command, like what word did Gandalf use? My guess would be something like stop. Yes, exactly. That's my guess. Stop would be the word I would guess that he actually said. I don't know in what language. But again, I that's why I think, like, when the door starts to open, I'm not sure Gandalf's focus is on the door anymore. His door is on the thing. His focus may well be. It might be. He might be trying to command the door to stop. The door is certainly going to break, as Gandalf has been anticipating it's breaking all the way through. Kingsfoil, I do think he would be commanding the Balrog. I mean, that is... I don't think commanding the Balrog seems to be a strange thing for him to do. Nor do I think he needs to know what it is. Some of you are talking about, like, it being difficult for him to stop it because he doesn't know what it is. This isn't Ursula Le Guin, right? He doesn't have to know its name in order to stop it. Necessarily, right? So yeah, I don't see any reason to think that way here. he is trying to stop this thing, whatever it is, he doesn't know, from getting at his friends and, of course, at the ring. Nancy asks, so why was the door affected? Why was Gandalf thrown down the stairs? What? The word of command proved too great a strain on what? We don't know. I am more and more inclining towards that on the fabric of Arda thing. If the door broke, I mean, the door does break, right? But if the door just broke as under a physical force, if the door merely shatters, again, I don't think it's door shrapnel, like the inertia of door shrapnel that's knocking Gandalf down the stairs. Whatever has happened, because I don't understand what a command capital C is exactly. And again, I'm not sure. Several of you are saying that the door seems to be the main issue. I totally disagree. The door is not the main issue. The something on the other side is the main issue. The door is merely the desperate hope to prevent it getting out. Gandalf's panicked response, remember. And panicked response number 1, aka Plan B, aka shutting spell on the door, has failed. The door is opening. Time to go to even more panicked Plan C, which is a word of command. Is Plan C still focused on the door when the Plan B secure the door plan has failed? It's possible. But I don't think it's necessary. I don't think Gandalf is fixated on the door anymore. But he speaks a word of command. Again, I think in Ursula Le Guin, when you speak a word of command, you're usually speaking nouns, names. I think Gandalf, I think it was a verb. Yeah. So the big reading of that, Bjorning, is kind of bringing together. Gandalf commands the Balrog, or attempts to at least, and is repulsed so violently that between Gandalf's command and its rejection, the fabric of Arda is strained, and the main focus of that fabric, the door, is broken, and by the way, so is the chamber. Yes. The door breaks, the wall breaks, the roof of the chamber breaks, Gandalf is thrown down the stairs. It would seem to me a little bit weird that the door itself would detonate in such a way as to, okay, but whatever. Like I said, I'm not wholly opposed to the idea that the focus is completely on the door. I just don't think it is inescapable. And what I do think is really interesting, and this is where I guess this is the main thing I would focus on. Tolkien's sentences here are deliberately vague. They're simple. Notice all the simple sentences. The counterspell was terrible. It nearly broke me. For an instant, the door left my control and began to open. So there we have a phrase at the beginning and a compound verb. It's the most complicated sentence so far. I had to speak a word of command. That proved too great a strain. The door was burst in pieces. Hear all of these really, really simple sentences? So he's got all these really simple sentences. And he's not explaining stuff. How did the counterspell almost break him? Exactly. What was the word of command? Whom was he commanding to do what? What was the strain upon? And why was it too great? Yeah. So again, what I think is important, and you're right, Jackie, the exclamation point is interesting there too. Began to open. It is unusual. It shows Gandalf being unsettled. Yes, I can agree with that. But I think the main place I would sit here is I would resist being too definite about anything. If you are 100% convinced that what Gandalf is doing is speaking a word of command at the door, and so the word of command on the door is like an extra super duper shutting spell, and the super duper shutting spell, like that door can't handle a super duper shutting spell, so like shutting spell plus counter spell plus super duper shutting spell makes door blow up, and the door blows up so badly it blows Gandalf down the stairs and blows the whole roof down. All I'm saying is that I think that you're being, if that's what you're thinking, I think you're being more definite than the text. I think that you're not allowing yourself to be open to like the ambiguity that Gandalf is actually putting out. Remember this, Gandalf does this all the time. Remember, this is Mr. I can put it no more plainly than to say, right? Like, you know, and of course, famously, he says that when he is not at all putting it plainly. He doesn't. He's not explaining any of these things because he's already explaining more than he usually does. What's a word of command, Gandalf? None of your business, Hobbit. Right? That's wizard business. Prove too great a strain on what? Never mind. Don't worry about it. Right? The door burst in pieces. Why did first of all, we don't even know here that like he's been waiting for the door to be broken by strength the whole time. Maybe the thing inside just kicked the door in at this time too. We don't know. We don't know. All he knows is that he got a glimpse. Okay, Gandalf probably understands. I'm going to assume Gandalf understands the word of command thing better than I do. But Gandalf is not fixing to explain what that means. Right? Luke, I do assume that this, well, I think, is the door made of stone? The text does only say another smaller door. But Gandalf is expecting the orcs to break in the door. Any moment I thought they would burst it open. Mind, that's after he put a shutting spell on it. So when he says I expected them to burst it open, he means I expected them to break the door. So I wonder if that suggests that it's made of wood. I think probably made of wood. Anyway. And it would be a little odd to hear voices through a stone door. Arden Crown, that's also true. So probably wood. Probably wood. Hearing the orcs talk about chash, fire, Does that mean they're thinking of burning it? Does it mean, are they talking about the Balrog? Who knows? Luke, is the grinding on its hinges? Which door is that? The other door is definitely stone. The door the troll was trying to come through. But anyway. Yeah, wood can be heavy and dense, and I imagine it would be fairly heavy. Anyway, I'm not going to worry too much about the door. In a sense, it doesn't matter. Though it's interesting. The door burst in pieces, but the wall gave way. Wall doesn't blow out or burst, or it just gives way. And the roof of the chamber gives way. Yeah, I think I'm inclined towards wood for this door. The bursting in pieces does sound like a wooden door. But in any case, we're running late. Last thing, I want to make sure we don't lose the point. Because there was a large point. We got to the final confrontation there. Kind of skipping over a bit in the middle. I found myself suddenly faced by something I have not met before. Then something came into the chamber. I felt it through the door. And the orcs themselves were afraid and fell silent. Now, he is not feeling heat. There is not fire. There is no rash on the other side of this door. We know this because when the door bursts into pieces, he looks through and just sees something dark as a cloud. He doesn't see fire. So he feels its presence. This makes me think of feeling the presence of the Nazgul. Something like that. Yes, JJ, I agree. He's still speculating later as to what the orcs might have been referring to when they talked about fire. And if through the door he had seen fire in the room or even felt the heat of fire through the door, he would have been less. It would not have been a mystery to him what they meant, right? Yes. So this thing, which had already been in some sense facing him from a distance, he now feels it enter the room. He feels it through the door. He can tell the orcs are afraid. He can just hear from their voices, which he can hear. He couldn't understand them, but he could hear them. And he could hear their fear. It laid hold of the iron ring. He knows that it is the thing that is grabbing the iron ring of the door. And then it perceived me and my spell. Somebody, I forget who it was, Green Great Dragon maybe? Somebody was talking about how interesting it is that Gandalf perceives the thing's perception of him. I think that has to do with his spell. Right? That he is exerting his will on the door. So he is pushing his own will onto the door with his shutting spell. His will is currently engaged in the door. And when the creature, when the something grabs the iron ring in the door, it is now interacting. Its will is now interacting with Gandalf's will directly. And Gandalf can tell when that happens. That's how he can perceive it perceiving him. Is that it interacts with Gandalf's will. And then it retaliates immediately. I have never felt such a challenge. Gandalf has never experienced. Gandalf, who has faced off with how many Black Riders at once on Weathertop? Was it 4 or 5? It was 5, wasn't it? He faced off against 5 ring wraiths at once on Weathertop. He has never felt such a challenge as this. And then the counterspell comes. Right. The presence of the thing. I think, going back, and we'll end with this, going back to, but I found myself suddenly faced by something I have not met before. What Gandalf means by that is, that was the moment, while I was standing there outside the door, waiting for the orcs to pull it open and then me to unleash Plan A. As I was standing there, I suddenly became aware of some. Remember when Frodo is perceiving the will of Sauron, right? The eye, like when he's on Amon Hen, Frodo, and he perceives the eye like searching and its will coming closer. This is almost like that. It feels a bit like that. It's not exactly the same. There are many differences, but you see what I mean? When he says, I found myself suddenly faced by something. Something is coming. It's not aware of him yet. So in that sense, it's not literally facing him yet, nor is it even in the room. I think when he's saying, I found myself suddenly faced by something I have not met before, he is saying, I became aware that on the opposing side from me and approaching, its will turned in my direction and coming closer to me, like Frodo felt the attention of the eye coming closer and closer, right? There is something over there. And like, this is no brigand or orc chieftain, right? There is something over there. And it's facing me. It's coming. Gandalf is having his, like, it is coming, I cannot get out moment here. And then it comes. It enters the chamber and he can feel it. The presence of this thing radiating through the door. And then it touches his spell. And he knows that it's aware of him. And then it unleashes its will. And he is almost broken by that. And then he who has almost been broken unleashes his will in a panicked extreme of force called command, a word of command. And after he was almost broken, now things are definitely broken. Didn't turn out to be him who was broken. Unfortunately, didn't turn out to be his opponent who was broken. But the whole surroundings break. The door breaks, the wall breaks, the roof breaks. Gandalf is thrown down the stairs. Isn't this fascinating? It's so tantalizing because, again, as I said at the beginning, we get more here than we get almost anywhere else about how magic works. And yet we still get so little. What we get here is way less than we got in the first draft. And as always, when that happens, it's unclear how much of that first draft stuff Tolkien kept. In his head, I mean, like, was still true in his head, how much of it actually changed and how much it was just taken out. Um, but yeah. Natvilkius, I don't think that I found myself suddenly faced is just the reason I don't think it's only an opening statement. The reason I think he does feel the presence before he hears the orc speaking is I could think of nothing to do but to try and put a shutting spell on the door. That seems to be in reaction to being suddenly faced by something. Like the suddenness of the being faced by something leads him, it seems, to have to think on his feet. And thinking on his feet, shutting spell. Right. So I could imagine it could happen. It could happen, like that kind of a sort of summary at the beginning. Did you meet the beater of the drums? Okay, he could say it, but I would expect it to be in a different tense. If he had said something like that in the past perfect, then I would have suspected it more. Do you see what I mean? Like if he had said, I don't know, but I had found myself facing something I had never met before. Let me tell you how it happened. Right? Like that could totally work. But the way that this comes in, it really does sound like his finding him, the suddenly there. The tense, simple past. The suddenly. The fact that this seems to make him change his plan. Yeah. Nadvilkius, he is worried that the orcs could break them. So again, that's why it wasn't plan A. He wasn't planning to do that because it's useless long term against orcs. Would be just a sort of a piddling delay. But when he finds himself faced by something he hasn't met before, he's pretty sure he wants to keep a door between them if possible. Yeah. Anyway. He needs more door. Agreed. Agreed. All right. Well, I should let you go. I've kept everybody super late tonight. We'll have to have a short field trip tonight. But thank you for joining me. Don't forget New England Moot this weekend on Saturday. Hope to see some of you there. And we should be back again next week. Join us next week when we learn more about Frodo's medical condition. Thanks, everybody. We will shift over to field trip time. Thanks, folks. All right. Good evening, Druid's Fire.
Good evening.
All right.
Getting everybody rated.
Good. We got that new stable master at the end of last time, didn't we?
We did indeed.
All right. Sorry. I didn't notice I had typed in the wrong password. Okay. Okay, here we come.
No worries, no hurry.
Well, no hurries, except like we're already late. Like we're already past when we should have ended. But
Like 9 o'clock Pacific time.
Yeah, that's true.
We're going to have spiritual cake at New England Moot.
Yes.
Because I won't be there.
I know you won't.
I'm very sad because I wanted sparrow waffles.
Yes. There will be sparrow waffles, I believe.
Alas.
And for people who don't know, that is not waffles made out of sparrows or served with sparrows, but rather made by our
And
friend
served by
Sparrow Alden.
the illustrious Sparrow Alden.
That's it. All right. I'm back. Okay. I'm going to head down to Anazarmechem again, and then I'm going to stable master from there. All right, because we do have a stable master here, don't we? Down here somewhere?
We do.
Oh, yeah, there he is. Okay.
The shadow of Mordor
Off
will
to,
not long fill the halls of Khazad-dûm.
What's it called? Hoodnil Maiden?
Hoodnil.
Is that it?
Hey, look, it's Pine Leaf.
Is that the one? Hoodnil Maiden?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, Pine Leaf. All right, here we are at the crossroads of Ash. And I think my biggest question here, the question I wanted to return to is, what's happening in this room? Oh, well, hang on a second. What's over here? Across this dramatic bridge with the fumes. I didn't even notice this last time. Okay, we get a little flight of stairs up to, and then we've got a little,
Vestibule.
yeah, a little under, look at this little, okay, no, it's just open. It's just a little archway. I thought it looked like a cellar or a little cave in here.
It's open to the, well, I wouldn't say to the sky, to the dwarves, because there's all kinds of doors all over the place.
Yeah, it's open. But there's no way out of it. This is just a little hall with a surprisingly, I mean, on the one hand, from dwarf size, this, you could say this is a huge gate, or rather a huge archway, but it's way smaller than every other archway we've seen. And it's got those teeth. That's really unusual.
Yeah, I don't understand what the teeth are all about.
No, so it's got this small spiky archway, but we can get up to the top too.
If not for the fact there wasn't like a door or a little pathway or something, I would call it like some sort of arena where people have fist fights or something.
You know, that's not a bad theory, because this,
Everybody would stand up here watching and, you know, cheering and
yeah,
throwing accolades down.
the stairs, the double, so okay, so we've got the approach over here, right? Is you've got the one small flight of steps that leads to the ground level, and then you've got the little scary low arch that goes in, and then you've got the two big flights of stairs that sweep up on either side, and it's just a platform around, as if it were like a viewing platform around this pit, which from up here certainly does look like a pit with no doors in it, nothing down there.
Yeah, there's no decorations, there's no furniture, there's no debris. I mean, honestly, if that door wasn't, the archway wasn't there, if it was like just an entire room, I would just call it a swimming pool.
Well, and look at this little channel up here. So on the other side, in the exact middle of this upper story, is a set of double doors, and then there's this like track, this concave, like it almost looks like a spout.
Bring a cart out of food or something?
I just don't know. Super strange.
Now there are divots using the same internal structure here, but they don't have the thing at the top.
Okay, you know what bothers me even more? It's not in the middle. It's not in the exact middle. It's
Oh, how
set off
dare.
to the side. Look at that.
How dare!
Because see this like tapering thing that I'm standing on right here is the exact middle of the door. And that tapering thing comes to a point off center of the channel. What the heck, people? Come on, dwarves, what are you going on about here? That's just not right. So this
Maybe they borrowed the sloppy craftsmanship from the Vales Wanduin and oh gosh, the Elder Slave.
you mean like from the pizza parlor?
Remember when we were wandering up through the hills near Lindleby, the village the hidden village?
Yeah.
There was that one bridge that had
Oh, right.
yeah, those guys.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think that was a sign of Khazad-dûm in decay. That's right. I remember that dwarf bridge, that badly built dwarf bridge. I don't know, though. Here in the middle of Khazad-dûm, that just seems improbable. And yet, sloppy design right in our faces. Unless there's some kind of purpose for it. Where was this chandelier hanging? The broken one here?
That's a very good question because there's a working one above it.
Right above it. And there's
Nothing.
there's nothing. There's another
Well,
one over
maybe this is
there.
a workshop that they're bringing it in. Because if you see the statue above the one to the east, it's like a dwarf with a anvil and a sword there. So maybe it's, I don't know, repair thing?
This is where you bring your broken chandeliers?
I guess. So I don't know how dwarves would actually fix crystal.
Yeah, I don't know either. You'd have to have those replaced, presumably. But the broken pieces are right here as if it fell right here and shattered in you know.
This is true.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to explain where it fell from.
No, there really isn't. Notice also, though, well, no, it looks exactly the same. So you've got I never really noticed that. There's the, like the squared off and decorated stone that the crystals are sticking out of.
Kind of like a vice or something holding it together.
Yeah, sort of like that. Anyway, this is exactly the same, just broken. Huh. Very strange. And these buildings, there are 3 buildings with doors. Like doors just meant to be seen by God and everyone, right out in the middle and everywhere.
I mean, it would be kind of suspicious if you had an entire kingdom underground and nobody could find any of the doors.
Right? It would give away the game, you think?
I think it would indeed. So you have to have enough of a smattering of doors to waylay any suspicions.
Maybe. So, thinking less violently than like pit for blood sports, what if that were like a goat stable down there?
That would work pretty well. The only evidence against is simply the fact that there's no bits of, I don't know, fencing or anything.
Right.
Keep them in.
No
Unless it was removed and reused at some point and the goats are not gone and there's like no bedding or, well, leftovers.
Yeah.
Maybe not blood sport, maybe just, drunken beer fights or something, I don't know.
Yes.
I wouldn't. I mean, it could also be a storage space, but it makes no sense to have the storage space below, and you have to go up 2 flights of steps, and unless
Nor to have it
that
open,
middle,
like I mean,
yeah,
nor having a goat stable for that matter. Like, I can only imagine how bad that would smell. Like, you wouldn't really want to have that open, either.
yeah.
I mean, that's why, as horrible as it seems, your arena theory. I mean, it at least explains why you'd want to have these ledges up here.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree, Darambar, the spiky entryway is very threatening. And very, again, much, much lower than everything else. Huh. Can we go into these places?
There are instances.
Okay, that's what I was guessing. Okay. Phil Gashan is making me think of Fouchon Ball, but it's not the same.
No.
Okay. Huh. What a strange little place.
I would say if this is like some kind of, fighting pit or something, this wouldn't. I mean, this little outcropping would be a great place for like an announcer or a dwarf lord watching the proceedings, like the VIP box or something.
Could
but
be.
This decoration in the middle is like, why? Somebody would trip over that and fall.
Yeah, it could be. And yeah, one of the doors claimed to be a forge. And there is the picture of the forge up there. With, by the way, the most personable looking Longbeard statue we've seen. The one with the hammer and the anvil and and the sword. I mean, like his cheerfully braided beard tucked into his belt and everything. I mean, that's
Durin.
It's very...
It's Durin.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just like compared to all the other dwarf statues we see, we see many with the long beards or whatever. I mean, but yeah, this guy, I mean, the detail on the tops of his boots and his braided beard and
his tunic, the bottom of his tunic, and then the sword on one side.
Yeah.
And I believe he's got a hammer. Yeah, he's got a hammer on the other side. So these are things that I've made or whatever.
Right.
Is he looking at the hammer in his hand, kind of like regarding it, or?
Yeah, he doesn't exactly look like he's in the middle of striking. He's just kind of holding it there and being like, "Hey, check it out! Look at my awesome hammer." I mean, just it looks a little bit dorky, and I mean that as a compliment. Like it's a pleasant kind of statue. It's not an imposing statue.
Definitely has a crown on his head.
So, if that's, as JJ suggesting, if that's an armory, which the statue makes it look like, and over here on the other side is a forge, because that's what the intrusive white text tells us when we walk in front of the door, what would the big double doors be? Some kind of palace or lord's court? Thinking of your point about, this being a vantage point where somebody would come out the fancy double doors and be like, here we are.
Quite possibly staff quarters.
Well, that's an interesting theory. JJ says maybe it's a place to settle duels. Maybe it's like a judicial combat arena.
And judge you to stand up here. Thumbs up, thumbs down.
I mean...
Oh, you not entertain.
It does look like this whole courtyard is built in order to give viewing area to that place down there. And when we ran in there first, it's like a trap. I mean, there's nowhere out of that down there. So that's not a pathway. That down there is a dead end. But up here is just all looking down on it. So, judicial duels. I like the theory.
It's a good theory.
It is a good theory. Less hideous than just simply, arena, blood arena.
Yeah, I was thinking more like, tavern brawl.
Right. Well,
A bit more friendly amongst dwarves.
right, but there's no real reason to... There's no good evidence for it. And it would be weird to build a whole arena for that. I mean, if you're going to have a tavern fight, you just do that at the tavern.
Well, maybe this isn't the tavern.
Maybe.
And this is like the tavern keeper's like, get out of my tavern, stop breaking the furniture, stop breaking the crockery.
Nancy suggests dwarf jousting. Hey.
Goat jousting, I'm down for that.
Could be. Could be. Yeah, we know almost nothing about dwarven legal proceedings known to sapiens because they're very secretive and don't tell us any of these things.
Except we know they know contracts. Very long-winded contract. Which is why it's really awesome that the lead epic story writer of this game used to be a lawyer. True story made of lines used to be a lawyer. In fact, you will find very funny in your Wigan marathon coming up.
Excellent. Okay, well this is, where are we? We are to the south, right? This is the absolute south down along this way. Okay. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, I am gonna think it's possible that this place, especially if this was a place for judicial combat, that this is like a magistrate's court or something across the way there. The fact that the doors are visible suggests to me that they're public buildings. I think that that's the main difference between the invisible doors and the visible. The invisible doors are like private residences, and the visible doors are public buildings.
That makes me wonder about the Westgate, if it's supposed to be hidden, even with the lovely tracery on it. Why is it hidden and there's other doors that are public in here? It makes me wonder.
Not sure. But yeah, so if I think these are public buildings, we got an armory and a forge and maybe some kind of magistrate's court or the local lord's court, lord or baron or whatever, regional commander around here.
I find it fascinating that the forge has the most ornate carving. You would think that the residence of a very important person would be like, oh, I get the statues. But no, the forge gets the statues. That's quite fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems kind of typical. It is true, Nancy, that if there is jousting, there would need to be an entire industry supporting jousting implements and armor and such, not to mention goat breeding. Oh, for sure. For sure. But those things, all of those things, one would think would be well within the capacity of the dwarves to do. All right. Well, I didn't even know that this place was down here, so I'm glad that we found it. Next time, we will turn back up towards, what was this called? The Crossroads of Ash up here. And I'll try to get a better understanding of the Crossroads of Ash as we work through. I think we probably only got maybe 2-3 more field trips in the Flaming Deeps before we move over to the waterworks.
And there will be much swimming.
There will be much swimming, indeed. Very good. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Sorry we're so late this evening, but a long, detailed, and fun passage to discuss tonight. And I look forward to seeing you all again next week. Thank you, everybody. Bye now.
Bye.